Hello there, and welcome to the sleepy sky. You've arrived in a quiet corner of the night, a small and gentle space where nothing needs to hurry and nothing asks anything of you. Perhaps today has been full, or maybe it has simply been long. Either way, it is behind you now. The hours that passed can soften at the edges, like distant hills fading into evening mist. Here, you're allowed to slow, to loosen your thoughts, to let your breathing settle into something calm and unhurried. You are held kindly in this quiet. As your breath settles into calm and unhurried rhythm, the world around you begins to blur at the edges. Colours dim, sounds soften, the sharp outlines of the day fall away, leaving only something hushed and kind. You do not need to chase any thought. You do not need to hold on to any feeling. Everything can drift, the way a single leaf drifts down through still air, turning slowly, gently, until it comes to rest. It is all right to sink into this softness. You can lean into this hush. It is safe to release the day here. You can lean into this hush, and as you do, another world begins to rise in front of you. It is a forest, not loud or dramatic, but calm and steady. The trunks of the trees are tall and patient. Their bark holds quiet shades of silver and deep brown. Overhead, the canopy folds together like a slow-moving sea of leaves, letting only a softened light reach the ground. The air is cool and faintly damp. There is a mild scent of earth and wood and rain that fell some days ago, now resting in the soil. Near your feet, the forest floor is a mosaic of fallen leaves and small twigs, of softened bark and scattered stones. Threads of moss spread in soft and silent patches, holding tiny beads of moisture that catch what little light remains. Among these small details, something begins to appear. At first, it is only a rounded shape, a slight rise in the pattern of leaves. Then another and another. Mushrooms, quiet and modest, easing into view as your eyes adjust to this gentle world. The mushrooms easing into view are not large or showy. Some are no taller than the width of your hand. Their caps are smooth and pale or speckled or shaded in warm browns that echo the colours of the bark around them. Their stems lift them just high enough to catch the softened air and the faint touch of light filtered through the canopy. They do not call attention to themselves. They simply exist, still and steady, like small breaths rising from the earth. Beneath their simple shapes lies a story that is older than the forest itself. Mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of fungi, the visible moment of a life that spends most of its time hidden underground. They are like quiet lanterns at the edge of a vast and unseen city. Where you see one mushroom, there may be miles of delicate threads beneath your feet, stretching through the soil, through fallen logs, and around the roots of the trees. This hidden system is called mycelium, and it moves through the earth in patient branching lines. It is thought that some of these underground networks can be enormous, spreading across entire hillsides, existing for decades or even centuries. Yet they do not feel heavy or imposing. They feel light, diffuse, and subtle, like a memory that moves just under the surface of awareness. The mycelium connects roots to soil, soil to leaf, leaf to returning soil again. In doing so, it holds a kind of balance, a slow exchange of nutrients and information that keeps the forest alive and quietly thriving. As this slow exchange continues, the forest above remains calm and composed. The trees draw water from the ground, helped by the fine fungal threads that reach into tiny spaces between soil grains. In return, The trees provide sugars formed in their leaves, gentle offerings that flow back down their trunks and into the waiting mycelium. Everything participates, everything shares. The forest moves nutrients the way the body moved breath, in and out, always seeking equilibrium. You're allowed to share in that settling sense of balance. Your own breathing can match that rhythm. Rising and easing the way wind moves softly through distant branches. In, out. A slow wave of air that cools as it leaves, that warms faintly as it returns. It is enough to simply notice this, to feel the chest expand and soften again, without effort, without strain. You do not have to manage this process. You do not have to guide it. Your body knows the pattern. Your body knows how to sink gradually toward rest. You can simply drift with it, like a leaf on a very gentle current. Around you, the forest grows quieter still. A distant insect hum softens into the background. Somewhere, a small night bird rustles among the branches, then settles, then grows silent. The light fades from deep green to blue-grey to a kind of tender darkness. The sort of darkness that feels like a blanket rather than an absence. Mushrooms stand like small silhouettes against the soil, curves and lines that mark the places where the earth has chosen to breathe out into shape. In this tender darkness, the mushrooms become easier to imagine, easier to feel. Their caps might be cool to the touch, with a faint velvety texture. Their stems might feel firm but gentle, like slender columns of quietly stored water. Inside them, cells expand and hold moisture, forming a living structure that is surprisingly strong for something so delicate. It is this careful arrangement of water and cell walls that allows mushrooms to rise so quickly after rain, unfolding as if the earth itself were stretching. Mushrooms rising as if the earth were stretching show you a different way of growing. There is no rush, only readiness. The mycelium waits, listening to the conditions of the soil and the air. When there's enough moisture, enough coolness, enough stillness, it sends small knots of tissue upward. These knots swell and slowly form the caps you see. It is as if the ground had been preparing for days, weeks, months, and then, in one quiet moment, decides to place a small sign of its presence on the surface. All of this happens beneath the notice of most eyes. The forest is full of this kind of gentle activity, subtle processes that shape the world without noise or urgency. Fungi break down fallen leaves, turning them into new soil. They release important nutrients back into the ground where roots can find them. They help hold moisture in place, keeping the soil from drying too quickly. They form partnerships with plants that let both partners rest more easily in difficult conditions. These are not dramatic acts. They are soft, essential gestures that keep everything quietly working. Knowing that the world is held together by so many soft, essential gestures can be a comfort. The weight of the day you carried may begin to feel less solid, less fixed. You're not required to hold everything together through effort. There are vast, unseen systems around you and beneath you that are already doing that work. Through the steady motion of air, the expanding and contracting of your lungs, through the quiet activity of cells and tissues, your body participates in these same patterns of exchange and renewal. You can trust those patterns. You can rest inside them, the way the forest rests inside its own slow cycles. You can rest inside these slow cycles, letting any remaining tension melt downward, like water sinking into deep layers of earth. In this slow descent, nothing is expected of you. Muscles loosen, Thoughts grow softer at the edges. When they arise, they do not need to be chased or held. They can simply appear, drift, and dissolve again, like a faint mist moving through the spaces between tree trunks. The mind does not need to be empty to be peaceful. It only needs to be gentle with itself, soft and forgiving, willing to move more slowly. A faint, earthy fragrance hangs in the air now, rich and calm. It carries hints of damp wood, of cool stone, of leaves that have lain on the ground long enough to become part of it. If you listen closely, you might imagine subtle sounds under the soil, the minute shifting of particles, the quiet glide of hyphae extending just a little farther, the delicate crumble of distant roots returning to the ground. These imagined sounds are soft and even. They do not disturb the night. They are the night, moving at its own unhurried pace. Some mushrooms do more than simply stand in the dark. A few species emit a faint ghostly glow, a pale green light that seeps from their caps or from the decaying wood they inhabit. This bioluminescence comes from small chemical reactions inside the fungal cells, as certain molecules meet oxygen and release energy in the form of light. To our eyes, it appears as a gentle shimmer in the darkness, as if a few fallen stars had chosen to nestle in the forest floor instead of the sky. The glow is not bright. It is subtle, soothing, a soft reminder that life continues even when everything seems still. This soft reminder that life continues in stillness can echo in your own body. Even as you lie motionless or nearly so, processes hum quietly inside you. Cells repair tiny fractures. The heart moves blood in a slow and steady rhythm. The lungs draw in oxygen, release carbon dioxide without needing constant attention. There is a deep intelligence in this, a wisdom that does not demand effort from your mind. You're allowed to surrender to it. You're allowed to let your body take over the work of keeping you here, gently, safely, without strain. In this forest, under this dim and patient light, mushrooms might shimmer at the edges of your awareness, their shapes softening as the night deepens. Around them, the mycelial web continues its hidden work, moving nutrients, sharing water, carrying signals along its branching paths. Above them, tree roots reach downward into the same soil, accepting what the fungi offer, returning what they can. The entire scene feels like a single, unbroken breath, drawn by the earth itself. The earth's single, unbroken breath moves through you as well. The air you draw in has touched leaves and water and soil. The air you release becomes part of that same circulating whole. You're not separate from this gentle exchange. You're drifting within it, supported by it, held by it. Your thoughts can be as slow as mycelium extending through the ground. Your feelings can be as soft as the moss beneath your imagined feet. There is room here for every part of you to settle. If a stray worry appears, it can be placed softly on the forest floor, like a small stone set beside a path. The mycelium will move around it, perhaps eventually over it, incorporating it into the larger pattern. The stone does not need to vanish. It simply becomes part of something wider, something that does not break under its weight. Your concerns can soften in the same way, becoming smaller as they rest among deeper, older rhythms that have carried life across vast stretches of time. In these deeper, older rhythms, mushrooms appear only briefly. They rise, release their spores, and then fade, returning their substance to the ground that gave them form. Their presence is temporary, but their effect is lasting. Each fruiting body adds something to the soil, to the network, to the balance of the forest. In this way, small and quiet lives contribute to something enduring. This is not a story of urgency. It is a story of patient, unhurried contribution, made gently and without noise. You too are allowed to be small and quiet in this moment. It is gentle to be this still. You do not need to solve anything or prove anything, simply by resting, by breathing, by existing in this soft space. You participate in a shared calm that stretches far beyond this single night. There is a peace in recognizing that you are part of something continuous and kind. There is a peace in letting yourself be carried for a while by forces that are older and steadier than worry. As you drift with that feeling, the forest around you seems to draw even closer, not in a confining way, but like a sheltering cloak. The trunks stand as silent guardians. The canopy hangs above like a calm and endless sea of shadow. The mushrooms at your feet are small markers of the hidden life below, each one a quiet doorway into the depths of the soil. Beneath them, the mycelial web waits, patient and intricate, ready to reveal more of its story when you're ready to follow. Beneath them, the mycelial web waits, and the night grows softer still. This is the threshold between what you can see and what lies hidden, between the visible shapes of mushrooms and the unseen threads that sustain them. Here, at this gentle edge, you're invited to rest a little deeper, to let your breath fall into an even slower pattern, to allow your thoughts to loosen like leaves, drifting down through very still air. You can allow everything to soften now. In this resting place, curiosity does not disturb sleep. It guides you gently toward it. You may sense a quiet question forming beneath the surface of your awareness, a wondering about what moves under the soil, about how those fine white threads weave through the dark and hold the forest together. This curiosity is soft and low. It does not press. It simply whispers that there is more to know, more to feel, in the slow and silent architecture below your feet. As that whisper fades into the background of your mind, the forest floor seems to darken slightly, not with fear, but with depth. It is like standing at the edge of a calm, clear lake at night, knowing that beneath the smooth surface lie layers of cool water, floating leaves, smooth stones, and resting roots. The unknown is not threatening here. It is spacious. It is quiet. It offers you a place to drift, and in that quiet offer the story begins to turn downward into the ground itself, into the spaces between grains of soil where mycelium threads its way in soft branching lines. Life does not end at the surface. It continues underneath, in patterns that are hidden but deeply important. In the same way, your own journey into rest does not stop at the outer layers of awareness. It moves inward, quietly, gently, to places that feel more still, more peaceful, more complete. In the hush of this imagined forest, under the watchful presence of calm trees and patient mushrooms, there is a simple, steady truth that settles over everything. Life can be slow, life can be subtle, life can unfold in silence and still be full. And as this calm world opens at your feet, the unseen network beneath the soil begins to call, ready to share its story, ready to show how the earth's softest threads hold so much of the world together in quiet, enduring peace. Beneath the soft world we explored before, beneath the quiet lift of mushrooms and the stillness of fallen leaves, something even gentler waits. It waits in darkness and coolness. It waits in places light cannot reach, weaving through soil with the patience of something that has existed far longer than forests themselves. It is mycelium, the hidden architecture of fungi, the quiet network that moves in lines so thin they could be mistaken for threads of moonlit silk. It moves in lines so thin they could be mistaken for threads of moonlit silk, reaching outward in slow, branching patterns. Each strand grows not with haste but with intention, exploring tiny spaces between grains of soil, slipping into gaps left by pebbles, drifting around the contours of roots. This movement is never rushed. It is the slowest kind of exploration, the kind that follows the Earth's own rhythm rather than resisting it. If you could shrink down to its scale, you would see a landscape of tunnels and crevices, each one filled with a faint earthy smell and the cool texture of mineral sand. And through that landscape the hyphae, the building units of mycelium, glide calmly. Hyphae gliding calmly might feel like a contradiction, but at this scale calmness is a form of motion. Each strand extends by adding cells at its tip, pushing forward cell by cell, a delicate and determined reach. Scientists describe this as tip growth, a gentle elongation guided by chemical gradients in the soil. But in the soft quiet of night, it feels more like listening. The network senses moisture, warmth, and nutrients, and follows those faint whispers through the dark. It drifts toward what will sustain it, then sinks roots, if they can be called roots, into the richest places. These strands widen where food is plentiful, narrowing where the soil becomes thin or dry. They do not waste energy. They do not strain. They move with the kind of efficiency that only deep time can teach. And in their movement, they create a map of the forest floor, a web of pathways that holds memory. Memory of where water lingers, where minerals gather, where roots descend. Mycelium does not have a brain, but it has a kind of distributed knowing, a subtle awareness that emerges through many threads acting together. Through many threads acting together, the forest finds its quiet balance. Studies have shown that mycelium can carry chemical signals from one plant to another. When a tree experiences drought, nearby plants may receive early warnings through these fungal connections. When one patch of soil becomes rich with nutrients, nearby fungi may shift their branches to take advantage of it. The forest is not silent. It communicates in soft chemistry, in slow pulses of molecules that travel along hyphae like messages carried by wind through tall grass. This is why some researchers call it the Wood Wide Web. But even that name feels too loud for something so subtle. In truth, mycelium behaves less like a system of wires and more like a tide, ebbing and flowing through soil, adjusting itself to every condition. It can retract from places that become too dry, leaving behind faint pale trails that mark where it once travelled. It can surge toward fresh fallen leaves, eager to begin breaking them down. It can wrap around small stones, testing their surfaces, absorbing minerals slowly. It is a fluid network moving through a solid world, a kind of soft internal breath of the forest. A soft internal breath of the forest, rising and falling through every inch of soil, reminds us that even what seems still is full of motion. You may feel the same within your own body, a quiet pulse, a slow drift of warmth beneath your skin, the gentle rise of your chest as you breathe without effort. These rhythms are not loud or forceful. They exist beneath the surface of your awareness, yet they sustain you entirely. mycelium moves with the same quiet purpose. Imagine a cross-section of forest soil. Near the top layer, where leaves have only recently fallen, hyphae push through soft material, drawing out sugars and nutrients. A few inches deeper, the soil becomes more compacted, darker and cooler. Here, the threads narrow, adjusting to the pressure. They wind around roots, forming delicate sheaths that help feed the plants above. And deeper still, where the soil is dense and the air sparse, thin filaments extend toward pockets of minerals, breaking down what they find with quiet precision. Each layer holds its own texture, loose and leafy above, firm and fine below, grainy and mineral-rich further down. Further down, the darkness becomes complete, but even in this space, mycelium thrives. It does not need sunlight. It does not wait for daybreak. It moves in a world made only of touch and chemistry, sensing its environment by absorbing molecules directly through its cell walls. Hyphae can detect tiny shifts in pH or moisture, allowing them to choose the most promising path forward. This is not thinking as we understand it. It is closer to feeling, a continuous awareness of the environment that requires no conscious decision. There is a calm wisdom in that kind of movement, to sense without rushing, to grow without forcing, to explore without fear. You may allow a part of yourself to follow that wisdom. Let your breath move softly without pushing it. Let your body sink deeper into rest without prompting it. You can settle into this moment slowly, like mycelium settling into rich soil. Everything unfolds at the pace it needs. Everything unfolds at the pace it needs, and that is enough. The forest has known this rhythm long before human eyes ever watched its cycles. Mycelium played a role in some of the earliest plant life on Earth, forming partnerships that allowed ancient roots to absorb minerals from raw rock. Without fungi, the first forest might never have taken shape. Their presence is woven into the history of land itself, written in billions of tiny threads that once helped mosses anchor to stone and primitive plants rise from shallow water. Even now, this network helps forests recover after disturbance. After fire, hyphae awaken from heat-resistant structures buried deep in the soil. After storms, they move quickly into fallen debris. After drought, they resume spreading where moisture returns. These actions happen slowly compared to the pace of human life, but on the scale of ecosystems, they are steady and sure. They are the slow turning gears of renewal. The slow turning gears of renewal hum beneath your imagination now, forming a quiet picture, the forest floor at dusk, touched by the last hints of fading light. A fallen branch lies partially decayed, its bark darkened with moisture. Underneath it, a delicate web of hyphae spreads like frost patterns on winter windows. A faint scent of wood and cool earth rises as the air shifts. Somewhere nearby, water drips from a fern, the sound soft and hollow. Everything feels precise yet gentle, alive but unhurried. For a moment, imagine touching that fallen log. Your fingers would feel the softness where fungi have begun their slow work. Layers of wood would crumble slightly, rich with organic scent. Just beneath the surface, filaments would continue their quiet weaving, not disturbed by your presence. They move far too slowly to react to a momentary touch. Their work spans days, weeks, months, and they simply continue at their own pace, regardless of who watches or does not watch. This kind of patience is rare in human life, but not impossible to mirror in mind. Right now, you can give yourself permission to be slow, to breathe as though each inhale is drawn through layers of soft soil, to exhale as though you are releasing something heavy into the ground, where it can be broken down gently over time. You can drift with these quiet shifts, letting them cradle your thoughts. You can rest in the knowledge that nothing here asks more of you than calmness. Nothing here asks more of you than calmness, and the mycelium itself reflects that invitation. It never forces the forest into balance. It simply helps it find the balance that already exists. When soil becomes too acidic, fungal enzymes nudge minerals back into alignment. When a tree lacks water, mycelium helps guide moisture through its networks. When nutrients become too concentrated in one cluster of soil, hyphae carry them outward. Everything becomes part of a continuous gentle correction. No urgency, no tension, just a slow return to equilibrium. In this sense, mycelium acts like a forest-wide whisper. It communicates without sound, connects without wires, and organizes without hierarchy. Each strand is both independent and communal, growing for itself yet contributing to the whole. The closer you imagine this structure, the more it resembles something deeply peaceful, a vast and quiet tapestry woven beneath the world, its threads glimmering faintly with moisture and life. A vast and quiet tapestry woven beneath the world may remind you of other networks, neural pathways, river systems, the branching veins in a leaf. Nature often repeats the same patterns across different scales, as if discovering a design that works and offering it again and again in new forms. Mycelium shares this pattern, branching, dividing, converging. It is the same shape found in lightning, in coral, in blood vessels. These echoes are not accidental. They reveal something fundamental about how life unfolds, outward, gently, in many directions at once. To sit with this pattern, even just in imagination, can bring ease. There is a comfort in recognizing these recurring shapes, in knowing that the world expresses the same soft logic everywhere. You are part of that logic. Your thoughts branch and settle. Your breath divides and returns. Your experiences converge into deeper understanding over time. Resting inside these patterns feels natural because it is natural. Resting inside these patterns feels natural, and as you follow that sensation, the forest floor becomes even more vivid. The cool air brushes lightly against your skin. A faint shimmer of bioluminescent fungi glows near the base of an old stump, casting a muted green against the soil. The glow is not bright enough to illuminate the trees, but it outlines small details. A curled leaf, a patch of moss, the delicate ribs of a fallen mushroom. This glow exists because certain enzymes break down luciferin-like molecules inside the fungi, releasing tiny amounts of light. A chemical whisper, a biological sigh. Bioluminescence here does not reveal anything urgent. It simply adds softness to the night. It reminds you that even in places we consider dark, life creates its own illumination. The forest becomes a place of gentle contrasts, light and shadow, silence and faint stirring, decay and growth. Nothing contradicts. Everything complements. This balance extends through the mycelial network, through every branching filament. Hyphae sometimes fuse when they meet, forming junctions where nutrients can move more freely. Other times, they bypass one another, tracing separate paths that will eventually converge. These small interactions create a structure that is both robust and flexible, able to shift its shape as conditions change. It is not rigid. It does not demand consistency. It adapts quietly. Adaptation here is not dramatic. It is not a sudden burst of transformation. It is the steady, almost imperceptible adjustment that happens over time. Hyphae exploring new soil turns slightly toward moisture. Strands in dry places retract, leaving behind faint tunnels for others to use. Enzymes released into decaying matter strengthen or weaken depending on temperature. Everything listens, everything responds. And this responsiveness is so gentle that it feels more like part of the Earth's breathing than a separate action. Part of the Earth's breathing, steady and slow, the mycelium continues its silent work. Even under heavy stones, even in compacted soil, thin strands can find a way through. They slip into microscopic cracks, widening them by fractions of millimeters as they pass. Over time, even the hardest surfaces yield. This is how fungi help break down rock into the beginnings of soil. What seems immovable becomes slowly transformed by softness. There is a message in that. Small, persistent gentleness can change almost anything. You may notice a quietness settling in your own mind, mirroring the calm efficiency of this hidden network. Thoughts might be drifting more slowly, passing through in softened forms. This is the way rest arrives, not all at once, but in gentle waves. If your attention wanders, that is natural. If your breathing deepens, that is natural. You are simply sinking deeper into the kind of stillness that the forest holds at its core. The forest holds stillness in every layer, from the canopy high above to the intricately woven hyphae below. The trees rest, the leaves rest, the soil rests. Even the fungi, constantly moving and interacting, give an impression of timeless calm. Instead of racing toward a single goal, the network expands in many directions, exploring what it finds, accepting what it cannot change, and weaving gently through the world. This is the silent web, not a structure of tension, but a structure of care. It nourishes without claiming, it supports without taking, it grows without overwhelming. The life it carries is shared generously through the forest, lifted from the soil into roots, from roots into trunks, from trunks into leaves, and eventually back into the soil once more. And as this quiet exchange continues, and as we follow these silent threads through the darkness, we rise toward the shapes that emerge from them. The fruiting bodies we call mushrooms, waiting for their moment to lift into the light. Beneath the forest's soft blanket of leaves, where the soil is cool and damp and layered with quiet stories, something small begins to stir. It is not loud, it is not sudden. It is a movement so gentle that even the earth barely feels it, a swelling, a gathering, a slow press of life preparing to meet the open air. Mushrooms begin their rise long before our eyes ever catch sight of them. What we eventually see as smooth caps and slender stems starts as almost nothing at all, a tiny knot of hyphae called a primordium resting patiently in the dark. Resting patiently in the dark, this small cluster waits for signals whispered through the soil. Moisture touches it first, pooling in tiny pockets after rain, cooling the ground just enough. Temperature follows, drifting downward into a comfortable range that fungi have known for millions of years. Chemical cues hum through the mycelial network, telling the primordium that the moment is right. And then, with no rush and no hesitation, it begins its slow ascent, pushing upward cell by cell, guided by the softness of the soil above it. This push is not forceful. It is more like a sigh rising through layers of earth. Hyphae swell with water, expanding gently, creating pressure that nudges soil grains aside, In human terms, the movement is incredibly slow, but to the fungi, this pace is perfect. They live in rhythms measured not in minutes, but in moisture and warmth and the long, steady unfolding of time. As the primordium grows, it stretches upward in a smooth, rounded shape, still hidden beneath the forest floor. Still hidden beneath the forest floor, it gathers strength. Cell walls expand, filling with water taken from the surrounding soil. Proteins assemble in quiet patterns, creating the structure that will become the mushroom's cap and stem. Underneath this forming architecture, the mycelial web continues to support the rising fruiting body. Threads supply nutrients, trace minerals, tiny fragments of sugars gathered from roots nearby. Every part of the network participates in this gentle construction. The forest, in its own way, helps lift the mushroom. When at last the rounded tip touches the layer of decaying leaves at the surface, it pauses. The world above is different, cooler, lighter, moved by breezes and tiny shifts in air. But the mushroom does not fear this new space. It simply continues, easing through the leaf litter with the same slow determination. As it emerges, its cap appears first, pale or patterned, depending on the species. The texture might be smooth like damp leather, or soft like the skin of a ripe fruit. Dew gathers on it before dawn, tiny droplets that glisten in silver shades. Silver shades appear across its surface as morning light filters through the canopy, even if clouds hide the sun. Mushrooms are shaped in a way that invites this subtle glow, with curved caps that catch soft illumination from above. As the cap rises fully into view, the stem lengthens, pushing it upward like a small umbrella unfurling. Some stems remain short and sturdy, hugging close to the forest floor. Others rise tall and slender, lifting their caps high enough to let spores drift freely when the time comes. Under the cap, gills form in delicate rows, thin radiating lines shaped with remarkable precision. Each gill is a tiny chamber of life, holding spores that will eventually float into the air. If you could look closely enough, you would see textures so fine they resemble brushed silk. The gills are one of nature's quiet masterpieces, arranged to maximize the number of spores that can develop in a small space. They are cool to the touch and faintly fragrant, carrying the scent of damp wood and freshly turned soil. Freshly turned soil holds its own kind of rhythm, and the mushroom mirrors it. A scientific detail lies beneath this gentle unfolding. Mushrooms grow primarily by expanding existing cells, not by rapidly creating new ones. When rain dampens the ground, water rushes into these cells, causing them to swell. This is why mushrooms can appear overnight, not because they grow fast, but because they absorb so much moisture so quickly. Each droplet becomes part of the fruiting body, giving it shape and strength. Giving it shape and strength, the water inside acts like a quiet architect. It presses outward, creating tension within the walls of the cells that helps the cap open wider and the stem grow taller. The entire structure remains surprisingly resilient despite its softness. Some mushrooms can lift small stones or push through compacted soil, but again, there is no violence in this movement. It is the strength of persistence, the strength of steady expansion, softness proving its own kind of power. As the mushroom stands fully formed, it begins the next stage of its brief life. Spores develop deep within the gills, each one a tiny capsule capable of becoming a new network of hyphae. They're incredibly small, invisible without magnification, yet they hold everything the fungus needs to begin again. These spores rest for a while in stillness, waiting for the air to shift. They do not rush. They do not force their release. They wait for the faintest stir of wind, a change in humidity, or the gentle touch of a passing creature. The gentle touch of a passing creature can send thousands of spores drifting into the air. They lift like soft dust, rising on microcurrents, floating in patterns that resemble tiny snowflakes. Their movement is nearly silent, too soft for ears to register. Yet if you watch closely, you may see a faint cloud, a small whisper of brown or white drifting outward. These spores may travel inches or miles depending on the air, each one carrying the possibility of a new network beneath the soil. Some mushrooms choose a different method of dispersal. Puffballs, when touched or stepped on, release a thick plume of spores that rises like smoke. Ink caps dissolve into a dark liquid that drips onto the forest floor, carrying spores with it. Parasols fling their spores outward when their caps are shaken by a breeze. Each strategy is a variation on the same theme. Life seeking life. Quietly, gently, patiently. Quietly, gently, patiently, the mushrooms continue their cycle. They rise with moisture, open to release spores, and then soften again, returning their form to the earth. The stem collapses first, bending under the weight of its own water. The cap begins to wrinkle, edges curling inward. Over days, the once smooth surface becomes mottled, darkened, softened by decay. But this decline is not a loss. It is the forest reclaiming what it lent. Every part of the mushroom becomes part of the soil again, feeding the mycelial web that made it. The mycelial web receives this offering without urgency or hunger. It dissolves the tissues slowly, breaking them down with enzymes that work in silence. Complex molecules become simple ones, hard textures become soft, colours fade into the earth. In this way, the mushroom gives back everything it was given, completing a cycle that has repeated for millions of years. There is a humility in this pattern, a softness that mirrors the slow exhale of a resting forest. A slow exhale of a resting forest drifts through your imagination now, as you picture these delicate forms rising and falling in seasonal rhythms. Some species appear only during certain months, responding to patterns of rain and temperature that have shaped their lives. Others appear year-round in cool climates, emerging whenever the soil offers enough moisture. In tropical regions, mushrooms may bloom after every rainfall, creating small bursts of colour across the forest floor. Each species has its own calendar, its own quiet timing. In that quiet timing you can sense the deep patience of fungi. They do not chase sunlight. They do not move through seasons with urgency. They respond only when conditions are right, when the earth and air offer their subtle invitations. This kind of responsiveness, gentle, adaptable, tuned to softness, carries a quiet wisdom. It shows that growth does not need to be constant or forceful to be meaningful. It can happen in small bursts, in slow rises, in moments when the world supports it. Consider how the forest feels during the hours when mushrooms rise most often. The air is cool, with a slight dampness that touches the skin like a fine mist. The ground gives easily underfoot, cushioned by decaying leaves and softened branches. Light filters through the canopy in muted tones, more shadow than illumination. In this muted world, mushrooms appear like small lanterns of shape and texture, their caps offering subtle patterns of spots, ridges, or smooth expanses. These patterns carry their own language. A speckled cap can deter animals by mimicking the appearance of toxicity. A smooth pale cap can blend with moonlight, offering subtle camouflage. A ridged or fringed cap may help spores disperse more effectively. Each form arises from millions of years of quiet adaptation, shaped not by loud competition but by the soft, slow forces of environment and time. These soft, slow forces seem to echo in your own body now. Your breathing may be deeper, your muscles a little looser, your thoughts drifting in calm arcs rather than sharp lines. There is something restful about imagining life that grows without hurry. Something soothing in picturing a world where tiny movements create entire landscapes over long periods. You can borrow that pace, letting your mind wander slowly, letting your breath settle into its own gentle expansion. Every few moments, allow yourself to soften further. The forest does not rush through its cycles, and neither must you. The mushroom rising through the soil does not force itself to grow faster than conditions allow. It simply aligns with the world around it and responds. You can allow yourself to respond to this moment the same way, not by striving, but by settling. Let tension slip downward, falling into the deeper layers of calm beneath you. As you drift deeper into this quiet forest scene, picture a single mushroom at the moment it emerges fully into the open air. The cap is still slightly curved inward, like a sheltering hand. The stem holds it upright with gentle strength. Below the cap, faint ridges, still forming their precise pattern, hold thousands of developing spores. Everything is in place, but nothing is rushed. The mushroom will stay like this for hours or days before releasing its cargo into the world. It stands not in anticipation, but in presence. Not in anticipation, but in presence. This is its gift to the forest, and perhaps to you as well. The mushroom does not measure time by clocks or deadlines. It knows only the cues of the environment, the slow drift of moisture, the cooling of air, the soft expansion of cells. It teaches that emergence can be peaceful, that rising can be gentle, that new beginnings do not need to burst forth with energy. They can unfold like petals softened by dew, like hyphae threading through soil, like breath settling into slow, steady rhythm. Spores are the next step in this unfolding, but before they lift into the air, the mushroom exists in a state of fullness. It has reached its shape, gathered its moisture, formed its delicate structures. This fullness is a kind of pause, the moment before movement, the quiet before release. In this pause, everything feels balanced. The cap curves gently, the gills hold their secret. The stem stands tall but relaxed. The forest around it hums with soft life. This hum is not sound so much as sensation, the feeling that the earth beneath your feet is alive with subtle activity. Roots exchanging nutrients, mycelium stretching another inch, leaves settling after a light breeze, tiny insects moving through moss. Everything participates in a shared stillness that is full rather than empty. This is the world mushrooms rise into, a world that welcomes small, soft growth. As you continue drifting with this image, allow your thoughts to widen, like gills extending beneath a cap. Imagine how each spore inside the mushroom carries a universe of potential, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. Some will drift far, some will fall only inches away, some may never grow at all. But each one holds the possibility of forming a new network, a new fruiting body, a new cycle of emergence. Potential resting inside stillness. Potential resting inside stillness mirrors the calm forming within you. You do not need to act on it. You do not need to shape it. You can simply hold it, the way a mushroom holds its spores quietly and patiently. Let your breath flow around that sense of held possibility, wrapping it in softness. You're not required to bloom at this moment. You're only asked to rest. If you listen softly, you might imagine the faintest sounds of the forest, the whisper of air moving around a small cap, the subtle shift of soil as roots drink in moisture, the distant rustle of a creature passing by. These sounds form a kind of natural lullaby, low and steady, shaped by the environment that nurtures every rising mushroom. And in that rising, in that delicate unfolding from soil to open air, you can sense the continuity between growth and rest. One makes space for the other. One emerges from the other. Mushrooms are evidence that life can move slowly and still flourish. That softness can be strong. That stillness can be full of purpose. And as these delicate forms rise from the shadows, we step into the world of diversity, shapes, colours, and quiet wonders that fill the forest with gentle complexity. Across the quiet spaces of the world, beneath forests and meadows and rain-washed mountainsides, mushrooms appear in forms so varied and soft that they seem like the earth, imagining countless ways to breathe. Their shapes rise slowly, their colours settle gently, and their textures shift from velvety to glass-like as they grow. In every region, in every climate, fungi find a way to express themselves through patterns that never shout and colours that never rush. Their diversity feels less like a display and more like a whispered reminder that life adapts with patience, taking on the shape that suits the land and the moment. Taking on the shape that suits the land and the moment, mushrooms begin with quiet intention. Some stand tall on slender stems, holding their caps above the leaf litter like small parasols. Others flatten themselves against fallen logs, forming wide shelves that seem almost carved from wood. Still others curl into delicate cups, translucent at the rims, collecting droplets of mist. Each form has its reason, woven from millions of years of soft adaptation. The forest does not demand uniformity. It invites variation, invites softness, invites the slow drift into whatever pattern helps life continue. In temperate forests, where the air smells of pine resin and damp earth, mushrooms rise in calm clusters. Small cup fungi rest near the bases of trees, their rims shining with beads of moisture caught from the morning fog. Some cups are the colour of pale amber, others nearly transparent, thin as the wing of a dragonfly. Light filters through them with a muted glow, turning each droplet inside into a small gemstone. They collect what the world gives them: rain, dew, fragments of falling leaves, without effort. Their purpose is not to gather, but to exist in the spaces where stillness gathers first. Stillness gathers first on fallen logs, where bracket fungi form layered shelves. These brackets do not hurry. They grow slowly, adding a thin new band of colour each year. If you run your fingers lightly across their edge, you would feel the firmness of their structure, the ridged texture that speaks of time. Some brackets are smooth, others patterned with rings that look like ripples in a pond. Their colours shift from cream to russet to charcoal depending on age and species. They embrace the fallen tree not as something dead, but as something becoming. In tropical rainforests the shapes change. Humidity hangs in the air like warm breath, and the soil teems with nutrients washed down by frequent rain. Here, mushrooms take on more vivid hues, blues that look like deep ocean shadows, yellows tinted with sunlight trapped beneath thick canopy, purples so rich they resemble bruised fruit. But even these brighter colours do not feel loud. They blend into the forest's dense layers of moss and vines, forming accents rather than displays. Many species use their pigmentation to shield themselves from intense sunlight, or to signal their presence to small insects that help disperse spores. To signal their presence, some mushrooms raise their caps high, tilting them just enough for passing insects to land. Others rely on scent, releasing faint chemical notes into the moist air. One species emits an odour faintly reminiscent of sweet fruit, while another has a scent closer to damp wood. These smells drift through the understory, subtle and earthy, guiding tiny visitors in ways humans rarely notice. The forest senses things we overlook, hints of moisture, traces of minerals, the soft presence of fungi that reveal themselves only to those who move close to the ground. Close to the ground, in regions where temperatures drop sharply at night, mushrooms form shapes adapted to cold. Thick stems support broader caps that retain heat from the day. Colours fade into gentle greys and whites, blending with frost-kissed leaves. In alpine regions, some species emerge only a few centimetres tall, shaped compactly to withstand brisk winds. Their caps may be round, almost spherical, allowing them to conserve moisture. Others appear like tiny domes of ice, their surfaces glistening where snow has just melted. These forms carry a quiet endurance, a reminder that life finds footholds even in cold and silence. Cold and silence shape other mushrooms in unexpected ways. Far beneath forest floors, in caves untouched by sunlight, certain fungi form long, thin structures that resemble frozen threads. These fungi cling to stone, drawing what they need from minerals and water that drips from above. In this lightless world, colour does not matter. Instead, shape becomes purpose. Long filaments maximizing surface area, spindly arrangements allowing moisture to cling to their delicate forms. They appear almost ghostly, pale and feather-light, drifting from ceilings like quiet constellations. Quiet constellations of fungi appear even in deserts. There the soil is dry, and the heat presses down in steady waves. Yet even here, mushrooms have found ways to bloom. Some desert species rise after rare rains, producing small fruiting bodies that open quickly and release spores within hours. Their shapes are compact and clever, folded inward to minimize water loss. Others form thick, club-like structures beneath the soil, emerging only when conditions allow. Their surfaces are rough, textured like cracked earth, blending perfectly into their surroundings. Even scarcity does not silence them. It simply shapes them. It simply shapes them, the way environment shapes every living thing. Where the air is dense with moisture, mushrooms grow thin and delicate. Where the ground is rich, they expand into broad caps. Where light is scarce, they elongate their stems to reach for patterns of brightness. Where darkness reigns, they glow softly. These adaptations speak of resilience without force, flexibility without urgency. Nature's patience is written into every ridge and fold of fungal form. One of the most enchanting shapes belongs to lion's mane mushrooms. Their long, white spines cascade downward like strands of soft hair, forming gentle curtains of pale growth. Touching one feels like brushing against silky threads, cool and slightly damp. In the dim light of deep forests, lion's mane mushrooms glow faintly ivory, their unique structure allowing them to capture light from multiple angles. They grow in tiers on old hardwoods, each forming a globe of delicate hair-like tendrils that sway almost imperceptibly when the breeze moves. When the breeze moves along forest paths, another species reveals its quiet magic, the ink cap. At first, ink caps look like simple cones rising from the soil. Their caps are smooth, thin, and pale. Over time, however, they begin to dissolve from the edges inward, turning into a dark, inky liquid. This transformation helps release their spores in a slow, dripping pattern that follows the curve of decay. Watching an ink cap melt feels like witnessing a life cycle compressed into a few soft hours. The edges curl, then sag, then fall, leaving behind a delicate stem like a quiet exclamation mark in the soil. Not all mushrooms dissolve. Some open gradually, revealing gills or pores. Boletes, for example, have spongy undersides instead of gills, their surfaces dotted with tiny openings that resemble a fine honeycomb. Touching a bolete is like pressing a finger into cool, soft memory foam, gentle resistance followed by slow give. Their caps can be wide and smooth, ranging in colour from warm cinnamon to deep burgundy. They feel grounded, stable, shaped for quiet presence. Quiet presence defines another form entirely, the Earth star. At first glance, Earth stars resemble simple puffballs. But as they mature and dry, the outer layer of their skin splits into multiple segments that peel back like petals of a wooden flower. These arms fold downward, creating a star-shaped base that cradles the central spore sac. When raindrops strike the sac, spores puff into the air in gentle bursts. Earth stars look like tiny celestial sculptures fallen onto the forest floor, their symmetry calming and soft. Calming and soft also describes the delicate netted stinkhorn. Though its scent can be strong, its structure is breathtaking. A fine, lace-like veil drapes from the cap, forming an intricate mesh of interconnected strands. The pattern resembles a tiny, glowing lantern when sunlight filters through it. Each thread is thin as hair, yet together they create an elegant, ghostly skirt that moves ever so slightly in the breeze. This species reminds us that beauty in nature is not always tied to scent or perfection. Sometimes it lives in textures and patterns alone. In the warmer forests of the southern hemisphere, brightly coloured coral fungi rise like miniature ocean reefs emerging from the soil. They grow in branching clusters, their tips reaching outward like searching fingers. Their shapes mimic the quiet spread of underwater coral, though they inhabit entirely different realms. Some coral fungi are vivid orange, others soft yellow, others pale white tinged with lavender. They feel both alien and familiar, like dreams made solid and left among the roots of trees. Roots of trees themselves host another remarkable form: truffles. Hidden underground, truffles grow in round, irregular shapes, forming inside moist soil where roots intertwine with mycelium. Their surfaces are firm and textured, marked with subtle ridges and grooves. Unlike other mushrooms, truffles never break through the surface. Instead, they rely on animals to dig them up, eating them and dispersing their spores. Their shape may be simple, but their existence speaks of deep connection with the creatures of the forest, with the cycles of scent and search that bind ecosystems together. All these forms, from the delicate lace of netted stinkhorns to the gentle domes of frost-kissed alpine mushrooms, emerge from the same kingdom, a kingdom distinct from plants and animals. Fungi evolved their own pathways, their own strategies for survival. Instead of sunlight, they rely on decomposition. Instead of seeds, they spread spores. Instead of roots, they weave networks. Their shapes reflect not the logic of leaves or limbs, but the logic of slow, silent transformation. Slow, silent transformation shapes even the smallest fungi. Mycena mushrooms, barely taller than a blade of grass, glow faintly in the dark. Their caps are tiny domes, translucent and delicate, pulsing with cool green light. If you kneel near them at night, the glow feels like a gentle breath against the earth, a reminder that life continues in quiet, unnoticed ways. Their forms are minimal, yet profoundly expressive. Softened geometry illuminated from within. Softened geometry appears across fungal diversity. Some mushrooms form spheres, their smooth surfaces unbroken. Others create funnels, drawing moisture inward. Some grow as thin threads that rise and split, forming patterns like living calligraphy. Certain species cover entire logs with overlapping fans that ripple at the edges like small waves. The variety is endless, but the intention is the same: to live, to release spores, to return to the soil in cycles unhurried and full of quiet wisdom. Quiet wisdom resides in their colours as well. A mushroom might begin its life pale and then darken as spores mature. Others start vivid and fade to soft greys. Colour shifts often signal age or environmental change, with pigments responding to air, moisture, or sunlight. These tones never feel jarring. Even the brightest mushrooms hold a softness, as if the world tinted them gently rather than painting them boldly. Nature uses colours like whispers, soft greens, muted golds, understated browns. Even reds, when they appear, carry depth rather than sharpness. The palette resembles autumn leaves fallen on stone, or minerals dusted across ancient rock. Each hue integrates seamlessly into its environment, part of a landscape shaped by time, not by sudden contrast. Time shapes everything in the fungal world. A mushroom's form may last only a day, disappearing as quickly as it arose. Others persist for months, gradually adding layers or changing shape as the seasons shift. Bracket fungi on old trees may endure for years, forming stacked shelves that mark time like the rings inside the trunk. Their shapes become part of the forest's memory, witnesses to rain and wind and subtle cycles of decay and renewal. And this diversity, these shapes and colours and soft structures, all arise from the same source, the quiet mycelial networks beneath the surface. Every mushroom is an expression of hidden life, a momentary bloom of underground intention. Some fruiting bodies reveal complexity, others reveal simplicity. But all carry the same quiet message. Life unfolds in countless gentle forms. Life unfolds in countless gentle forms, each shaped by landscape, climate, and the deep rhythms of time. Mushrooms remind us that beauty does not need volume, that existence does not need urgency. They show that stillness can be expressive, that subtlety can be profound, that softness can shape the world in ways we rarely see. And from shapes and colours, we drift toward purpose, the slow, essential work mushrooms perform in keeping the earth balanced and alive. Deep beneath the sprawling canopy, where the forest's breath cools into a steady hush, the quiet work of renewal unfolds. It unfolds in darkness and patience, in spaces where fallen leaves gather like soft blankets and branches settle into stillness. It unfolds in the hands of fungi, whose slow and steady rhythms hold together the cycles of life. Every forest breathes because fungi break down what has fallen. Every forest is born again because these gentle recyclers know how to turn endings into beginnings, how to take what rests and help it rise again as soil, nutrients, and quiet life. Quiet life moves through the forest floor in countless tiny motions. A twig softens, a leaf darkens, a root, once firm, curls inward as it dries. Fungi notice each of these subtle changes. They respond without haste, sending thin hyphae outward into the spaces where decay has begun. These strands are slender and pale, moving through matter as if guided by instinct. They weave through fallen bark, through layers of soil, through cracks in the wood where rainwater has collected. They follow faint chemical signals, drifting toward the precise materials they are meant to break down. Drifting toward the precise materials they are meant to break down, fungi release enzymes into the substrate around them. These enzymes are quiet workers, dissolving complex molecules one breath at a time. Lignin, one of the strongest organic materials in the natural world, begins to weaken under their steady presence. Cellulose, which gives leaves their structure, softens. Proteins unravel. Even the tough fibers that form the skeleton of wood loosen when touched by fungal chemistry. This softening does not happen quickly. It happens at a rhythm tuned to soil temperature, moisture, and time. It mirrors the slow heartbeat of a resting forest. As the forest rests, fungi lean deeper into their work. Imagine a fallen log lying across the ground, heavy with moss and weathered by seasons. At its surface the bark may still hold shape, textured and firm, but underneath, the wood changes. Thin lines of white mycelium spread through the inner layers, dividing the wood into sections rich with moisture and nutrients. Over months or years the log will lose its strength. A slight press from a boot or the weight of a small animal might leave an impression. The surface becomes soft, dark, and fragrant. The internal tissues begin to resemble soil. Resembling soil is the log's quiet rebirth. What was once a sturdy structure becomes the foundation for new growth. Insects carve tiny tunnels through the softened wood. Seeds settle into cracks and sprout into tiny stems. Moss blankets the surface, drawing water from the spongy material beneath. All of this life depends on fungi. Without them, logs would remain rigid and unchangeable for decades, blocking the flow of nutrients. But with fungal presence, the forest turns itself over gently, in a cycle that feels more like breathing than breakdown. More like breathing than breakdown, decomposition in the forest follows its own soft rhythm. It is not destruction, it is transformation. A leaf falls in autumn, landing on the forest floor with a faint sigh. Rain darkens it, frost crisps it, sunlight bleaches it. But nothing truly changes until fungi arrive. Hyphae slip into the leaf's veins, sensing the sugars and compounds held inside. They begin to break the leaf down layer by layer, until what remains is a delicate skeleton that crumbles at the slightest touch. This crumbling returns nutrients to the soil, ready to nourish roots and seedlings. Seedlings depend on this quiet nourishment. Their roots are thin and fragile, unable to break down matter on their own. But fungi do the work for them, converting decaying leaves and bark into forms plants can absorb. In many cases, fungi go a step further, forming partnerships with roots that help both organisms survive. These relationships, known as mycorrhizae, connect trees and plants to the mycelial web, creating channels through which nutrients flow. A tree may offer sugars created in its leaves, and fungi offer minerals, water, nitrogen, and even subtle chemical signals. These subtle chemical signals act like soft conversations. When one tree struggles in dry soil, it may receive extra water through fungal networks. When another tree has access to rich nutrients, it may send excess to its neighbours. When a sapling grows beneath towering elders, fungi may help it receive what little light allows, supplementing its growth until it can stand taller. These exchanges do not come from intention. They come from structures and processes refined over millions of years. Yet they give the impression of care, of a forest looking after itself through quiet collaboration. Quiet collaboration defines the work of fungi. They do not take more than they need. They do not dominate the soil. They fill empty spaces, respond to invitations, drift into opportunities for balance. Even their enzymes work delicately, breaking down matter slowly enough that other organisms can benefit. Bacteria feed on the smaller molecules created by fungal digestion. Earthworms feed on the enriched soil. Plants grow stronger. Animals find shelter in softened logs. The entire ecosystem rests on the steady hands of these recyclers. The steady hands of these recyclers reach into all corners of the forest. They move through fallen trees, through brush piles, through the soft mulch created by decaying needles. They spread across damp riverbanks and through cool, shaded ravines. Even in dry seasons they remain beneath the surface, waiting for moisture to return. They do not panic when conditions shift. They simply pause, holding their energy like a breath, ready to resume their work when rain finally touches the ground. When rain finally touches the ground, the forest seems to awaken. Drops seep into the soil, breaking apart tiny clusters of dried earth. Hyphae swell again with moisture, expanding and renewing their reach. Enzyme production increases, logs darken, leaves become supple. The air fills with the scent of petrichor, that faint, cool smell that signals water meeting dust. Within hours, fungi are back at work, breaking down what the forest has laid before them. This responsiveness shows how deeply fungi are tied to the rhythms of water, how attuned they are to the natural pulses of life. Natural pulses of life extend far beyond what is visible on the forest floor. In some ecosystems, fungi are responsible for breaking down matter that no other organisms can touch. Certain species dissolve lignin, the tough polymer that gives wood its rigidity. Others break down keratin, the material that forms feathers, hair, and nails. Still others consume oils, waxes, and resins left behind by plants. Their enzymes are incredibly specialized, capable of dismantling materials that would otherwise accumulate endlessly. Fungi prevent the world from filling with unchanging remnants. They make space for new growth. New growth appears wherever decomposition has occurred. A patch of soil enriched by fungal activity can support a wide range of plant life. Flowers root themselves in these places, scattering colour across the forest floor. Young saplings push their first leaves into open air. Ferns rise in soft spirals, unfolding in slow motion. Even the smallest patches of moss grow thicker on logs that fungi have softened, forming green carpets that hold dew between their tiny leaves. Every shade of growth carries the signature of fungal work. The signature of fungal work is subtle. It appears as softened bark, as richly scented soil, as small hollow spaces where insects move. It appears as darker colours at the base of trees where moisture lingers. It appears in the quiet collapse of a fallen branch, the way it sinks into the ground like a fading breath. These signs tell the story of a process that moves without hurry, without force. They tell the story of renewal that unfolds in the same gentle cadence as a calm night settling over the forest. A calm night settling over the forest brings with it the feeling that everything slows in unison. Some animals retreat into burrows, others perch in branches. Still and watchful, the air cools, the ground exhales faint wisps of steam, and all the while, beneath this tranquil scene, fungi continue. Their work does not depend on daylight or noise. It follows its own cycles, dictated only by moisture, temperature, and the quiet chemistry of life. These quiet cycles continue even in habitats where decay seems unlikely. In grasslands, fungi break down the fibrous remains of tall stalks and fallen seeds. In wetlands, they dismantle reeds and driftwood. In tundra regions, where temperatures remain low for most of the year, certain fungi work slowly on lichens and frozen plant material, turning them into soil that will nourish the short-lived bursts of summer growth. Across the world, in every climate, fungi act as universal recyclers. Universal recyclers shape not only ecosystems but time itself. Without fungi, dead matter would accumulate layer upon layer, burying the ground in the remnants of seasons never completed. Nutrients would remain locked inside wood and leaves. Plants would starve, animals would struggle, the world would become stagnant. But with fungi, nothing stays still for long. Matter cycles back into life. Soil renews itself. Forests remain vibrant through centuries. The world breathes because fungi breathe with it. Breathe near the world, fungi remind us of the quiet importance of slow processes. They remind us that transformation does not need to be loud. That renewal can happen grain by grain, thread by thread, in darkness, in silence. This lesson feels gentle against the backdrop of a busy world. It shows us that even when things appear still, important changes are unfolding beneath the surface. Even when progress seems invisible, something essential may be taking shape. Something essential takes shape every time fungi offer nutrients back to the soil. They do not hoard. They do not store more than they need. Excess minerals drift outward through their web, reaching roots that cannot access them otherwise. Water moves along hyphathea like soft currents, arriving at thirsty plants in precise amounts. Even carbon, captured by trees and returned to the ground through fallen leaves, is redistributed by fungi into new forms. They are the caretakers of balance, the guides of transition. The guides of transition hold this role without fanfare. They do not bloom in bright colours to advertise their presence. They do not roar or leap or climb. Their presence is felt only through the softness of soil beneath your feet, the richness of forests that continue year after year. They are the quiet hands that cradle the earth's processes. Their labour is continuous, subtle, unobtrusive. Yet without them, nothing would remain steady. Steady is the word that defines fungi best. Their rhythms are steady. Their changes are steady. Their responses are steady. Even when storms roll through, even when drought lingers, fungi adjust in tiny increments, waiting for the moment when conditions align again. There is no panic in their pause, only patience. This patience permeates the entire forest, shaping its mood, giving it a sense of timelessness. A sense of timelessness settles over you now as you imagine these gentle recyclers moving through the soil, through fallen leaves, through old logs. They do not hurry, they do not slow down, they simply maintain their steady presence, turning what has fallen into what will rise. Their work is the Earth's oldest kind of alchemy, transformation through stillness. And as forests renew through this patient work, We drift toward more unusual stories, the strange, gentle, and surprising adaptations fungi carry through time. Across the quiet tapestry of the natural world, there are places where fungi reveal shapes and behaviours so gentle and strange that they feel like the earth is whispering its imagination. These wonders do not shout for attention. They do not pulse with urgency or force. Instead, they unfold in silence, drifting through soft cycles of life that seem made to soothe rather than startle. Mushrooms and their kin carry patterns that stretch the very edges of what life can look like, and they do so with calm precision. Slow shapes, glowing hues, delicate chemistry, and tender resilience woven into every thread. Tender resilience becomes visible the moment you step deeper into the shaded corners of a forest. At first, you may see nothing unusual, only moss, fallen branches, and the steady rise of tree roots beneath the soil. But if you pause and let your eyes adjust, tiny hints of fungal oddities begin to emerge. A faint shimmer here, a small puff of dust there, patterns that seem carved from lace, shapes that appear both familiar and otherworldly. These subtle wonders become clearer as you lean in, as though the forest reveals them only to those who slow down enough to notice. Slow down enough to notice, and you might see a soft glow under a rotting log. It is not bright, not enough to cast shadows, but enough to create a pale halo around small patches of fungi. This glow belongs to foxfire, bioluminescent fungi that emit a cool greenish light. The phenomenon comes from an enzyme deep within the fungal cells. As it reacts with oxygen, tiny sparks of energy are released as visible light. But in the stillness of the forest, it feels less like chemistry and more like a secret lantern left behind by the night. Bioluminescent mushrooms may use their glow to attract insects that carry their spores, but whatever the purpose, the effect is soothing. Soft light, soft meaning, soft presence. Soft presence appears again in mushrooms that breathe out gentle clouds of spores. Puffballs, round and simple, sit quietly on the ground until touched by a passing foot, a falling leaf, or a curious creature. Then, with the faintest pressure, they release a small plume of spores into the air. The cloud rises like a sigh, brown or grey, calm and weightless. Watching spores lift in this way feels like watching smoke drift from incense or mist rising from still water. The movement is slow, dispersed, and full of softness. Full of softness, too, are the earth star fungi. When they first form, they resemble plain, round balls resting on the soil. But as they mature, their outer layers split into star-like arms that fold downward. The central spore sac sits elevated in the middle, like a tiny planet encircled by its own soft constellation. Each arm curls gently, revealing inner surfaces that shift from beige to soft brown to muted grey. When raindrops strike the centre, spores puff outward in gentle bursts drifting into the cool air. Earth stars feel like sculptures carved by time, peaceful in their symmetry. Symmetry shows up again in the delicate structures of lattice fungi. Their fruiting bodies open into netted patterns that resemble tiny cages made of air. The thin walls interlace like the framework of a lantern, each strand glowing faintly when morning light touches it. These nets attract insect with faint scents and dazzling shapes, guiding them to carry spores away. They look fragile, but they hold their form with surprising steadiness. To see one in the forest is to witness nature weaving lace out of living tissue. Soft, intricate, fleeting. Fleeting is the life of the delicate ink cap, At first, it stands like a simple bell-shaped mushroom, its edges smooth, its surface pale, its stem thin and straight. Then, as it matures, the cap begins to liquefy from the bottom upward. The gills dissolve into a black, inky fluid that drips softly from the edges. This transformation, known as deliquescence, is a way for the mushroom to release its spores in a slow widening of its surface. The ink-like liquid pools on the ground or runs down the stem in dark streaks. It is a quiet unravelling, a reminder that endings can be gentle, dissolving into softness rather than collapsing all at once. Dissolving into softness describes many fungal oddities. Jelly fungi, for example, form shapes that resemble softly set gelatin. Their bodies wobble with the faintest touch, translucent or amber-coloured depending on the species. Some cling to logs like small drops of honey. Others form brain-like folds or coral-like branches. Their texture is cool and smooth, holding water the way a sponge does. After rain, they swell into round, plump shapes. During dry spells, they shrink into thin, hardened forms. These fungi adapt like small reservoirs of the forest, expanding, retreating, and expanding again. Expanding and retreating continues in the strange world of slime moulds, organisms once thought to be fungi, but now known to belong to their own group. Slime moulds move, not fast, not visibly, but steadily across wood and soil, leaving delicate trails behind. Their bodies resemble thin films of colour, mustard yellow, soft lavender, bright orange, gliding across fallen logs in slow waves. They search for bacteria and organic matter to consume, stretching outward like a soft, wandering fabric. When conditions allow, slime moulds form fruiting bodies that rise like miniature sculptures, stalks topped with spheres or clusters of shimmering sporangia. Their existence blurs the boundary between plant, animal, and fungus, adding another layer to the forest's quiet magic. Another layer of magic reveals itself in the resilience of fungi. Certain species survive in places that seem inhospitable: Arctic tundra, volcanic soil, high mountain cliffs, even radioactive zones. They adapt without fuss, adjusting their structures to withstand extreme temperatures or scarce nutrients. Lichens, partnerships between fungi and algae, can grow on bare rock, their slow expansion helping form soil for future ecosystems. Their colours range from soft sage green to pale blue-grey to dusty orange, covering stone surfaces like gentle brushstrokes. Gentle brushstrokes appear in fungi shaped like delicate coral reefs. Coral fungi grow in branching forms, rising from soil like tiny trees or frozen flames. Their colours vary from snowy white to soft gold to deep salmon. They look almost like underwater life lifted into air, quiet, stately, still. Their texture is smooth and firm, breaking cleanly when touched. They grow in clusters that seem to hum with quiet order, each branch extending with calm purpose. Calm purpose also defines stinkhorn fungi, though their scent tells a different story. Stinkhorns release strong odours designed to attract insects, which help spread their spores. The scent can be earthy, sweet, or sharp, depending on the species. But their shapes are extraordinary. Some look like latticed cages, others like slender spires, others like small, textured eggs that burst into elaborate structures overnight. A stinkhorn's transformation is sudden, but never chaotic. Even in their unusual designs, they hold a certain quiet elegance shaped by the forest's long memory. The forest's long memory nurtures fungi with even stranger adaptations. One species, called the dead man's fingers, grows in clusters of black, finger-like projections emerging from soil or decaying wood. Their unusual form looks eerie at first, but their purpose is simply to fruit and disperse spores. The name reflects human interpretation more than the fungus itself. Touching them reveals a firm, slightly rough surface. Cool, steady, grounded. They rise through the soil, with slow determination, a reminder that unusual shapes do not break the serenity of the natural world. Serenity deepens when you consider how fungi communicate. Mycelium carries chemical signals through soil, allowing some fungi to respond to changes in their environment. Certain species can detect toxins and reroute their growth away from harmful substances. Others sense when nearby roots are stressed and deliver nutrients accordingly. Though these responses took millions of years to refine, they appear effortless, the soft intelligence of a kingdom that listens more than it speaks. Listening more than speaking, fungi teach us something about presence. They emphasize the value of quiet changes, of gentle responses, of slow adaptation. A puffball does not rush to spread its spores. A glow mushroom does not beam brightly enough to disturb the night. A slime mold's movement requires patience to witness. These small beings unfold their lives in ways that invite us to soften, to slow our breath, to lean into the calm spaces between thoughts. The calm spaces between thoughts widen as you imagine the soft glow of foxfire beneath a log, the subtle shiver of jelly fungi after rainfall, the delicate threads of a lattice mushroom swaying in a quiet breeze. These oddities do not disturb the forest's peace, they enrich it. They add texture and depth to the nighttime stillness, reminding us that the world is full of quiet creativity. Quiet creativity extends to fungi, that partner with the insects. Some species produce spores that ants unknowingly carry home, where the fungi continue their life cycles in warm, hidden spaces. Others create subtle scents that attract beetles, flies, or wasps, guiding them to help spread spores far beyond the parent fungus. These interactions form intricate webs of dependency, each participant contributing to a system more complex than any single organism could manage. Yet the process remains gentle. No rush, no noise, only quiet exchanges carried out in the slow breathing of the forest. In the slow breathing of the forest, you might imagine mushrooms shaped like tiny bells ringing silently with dew, or fungi that resemble small cups filled with raindrops, their surfaces shining in soft morning light. Or mushrooms forming smooth spheres atop thin stems, trembling gently when wind moves through the trees. These shapes and motions feel like natural poetry, tiny verses scattered across soil. Some verses stand taller. Parasol mushrooms rise with long stems and wide patterned caps that open like elegant umbrellas. Their surfaces are textured, often adorned with intricate scales. They sway softly in the wind, moving with a slow grace that mirrors the forest's rhythm. Under their caps, gills spread in pale lines, perfectly spaced. These mushrooms seem to whisper of structure and balance, of simple shapes perfected by time. Time shapes every unusual fungus, coaxing each species toward adaptations that suit its place in the ecosystem. Some mushrooms grow only on burned ground, appearing after forest fires to help rebuild the soil. Their fruiting bodies emerge from ash, pale and determined. Others live within decaying leaves, barely visible. Some choose the sides of trees, the surfaces of rocks, or even the skins of living animals as their homes. Their choices reveal their flexibility, their forms reveal their creativity, their persistence reveals their strength. Their strength does not show as force, it shows as endurance, the quiet ability to survive in hidden cracks, to rise after storms, to glow in darkness, to dissolve into softness. The oddities of the fungal world remind us that life can be full of wonder without ever becoming loud. That strangeness can be gentle. That unfamiliar shapes can make the world feel more magical, not more frightening. More magical too, because these wonders remind us that the forest is full of unseen connections. Fungi interact with insects, plants, soil microbes, and even animals, weaving themselves into the fabric of ecosystems in subtle ways. A glowing mushroom might guide a nocturnal insect. A jelly fungus might feed a small bird. A puffball releasing spores might nourish the soil miles away. Everything happens quietly, yet everything matters. Everything happens quietly, yet everything matters. A lesson fungi offer with every unusual shape and gentle adaptation. They show that being different does not disrupt the world, it enriches it. That softness can coexist with resilience, that the strangest forms can carry the calmest rhythms. And from these quiet wonders, we drift into relationship. How mushrooms connect with the creatures who share their world. The forest moves in gentle layers, the slow turn of leaves, the soft hum of distant insects, the quiet shift of soil beneath small paws. Within these calm motions lies a web of companionship that rarely announces itself. Animals and fungi share bonds made not of intention, but of presence, of proximity, of small exchanges that hold entire ecosystems together. These connections form in silence. They unfold in patience. They remind us that cooperation does not always require awareness, only closeness, only rhythm, only the steady heartbeat of a living landscape. A living landscape is shaped by many relationships, yet the ties between animals and fungi drift quietly beneath the surface. Deer roam forest paths after rain, lowering their heads to nibble at fresh mushroom caps. Their steps are soft, barely audible beneath the trees. As they move, spores cling to their fur, tiny grains caught in fine hairs, carried for miles without any effort at all. Whether the deer pause in a meadow or settle near a stream, some of these spores fall, settling into new soil where the cycle of growth can begin again. Begin again, this is the ongoing promise of fungi, and animals help fulfill it with every gentle brush of fur against a cap. Foxes pass through underbrush, their tails stirring the air just enough to release clouds of spores from hidden puffballs. Rodents scurry across fallen logs, knocking loose bracket fungi that scatter spores like quiet confetti. Even the smallest creatures, ants, beetles, tiny flies, move through forest litter in ways that help fungi reach new ground. These interactions do not require intention. The forest designs itself to move in soft shared cycles. Soft shared cycles shape the habits of many creatures. Birds forage on fallen logs, picking at insects that live in decaying wood. In doing so, they disturb fungal tissues, releasing spores into the air. Some species even use bracket fungi as perches or shelters, their wings brushing the surfaces as they land. These small contacts create tiny currents of wind, enough to lift spores from gills and pores, carrying them farther than the mushroom could on its own. Mice and voles often rely on fungi for food, especially species like truffles that grow beneath the soil. They dig into the earth with quick, deliberate motions, following the faint aromas released by underground fruiting bodies. Once the truffles are eaten, the spores pass through their digestive systems unharmed. When the animals travel and deposit their waste, they scatter fungal spores throughout the forest. What seems like a simple search for food becomes a crucial act of dispersal. A crucial act of dispersal appears as well in the movements of squirrels. In the late summer and autumn months, squirrels store mushrooms in the crooks of branches or beneath layers of leaves. They treat them the same way they treat nuts, as something to save for leaner seasons. Many of these stored mushrooms are never retrieved. Instead, they dry out, release spores, and seed the ground with new potential for growth. Squirrels, through their scattered collections, become gardeners of the fungal world. Gardeners of the fungal world include creatures far smaller and quieter. Insects that spend their lives inside decaying wood. Beetles and their larvae carve small tunnels through logs, softened by fungal hyphae. Their movements create channels where oxygen can flow, where moisture can settle, where fungal threads can expand. Termites work similarly, feeding on partially decomposed material and leaving behind pathways that fungi quickly occupy. In this way, the labour of insects becomes an invitation, a gentle opening for the fungal web to spread. Spread softly, fungi also support animals by creating structures that shelter and protect. Bracket fungi, strong and wide, form stepping stones for beetles and ants moving across damp soil. Some amphibians, small frogs and salamanders, rest beneath these natural shelves to avoid sunlight or predators. The cool underside of a bracket fungus creates a perfect miniature shelter, a stable spot where moisture collects and where the forest's humidity remains steady. Steady environments matter deeply for creatures that require specific moisture levels to survive. A salamander resting beneath the decaying log may depend on fungi to keep that log soft and porous. As fungi break down the wood, they release water molecules into the surrounding air. This helps maintain the microclimate beneath the log, creating a sanctuary where amphibians and insects can breathe easily, where the temperature stays cool, and where predators rarely intrude. Rarely intruding are the fungi themselves. Their presence is subtle, but their influence shapes every corner of the habitat. When fungi decompose fallen leaves, they produce rich soil that earthworms consume. As earthworms tunnel through this soil, they create burrows that small mammals use as pathways or temporary shelters. Birds forage through these worm-rich patches of earth, uncovering insects and seeds hidden beneath the surface. Without fungi, the ground would lack the softness and nutrition that draw so many animals close. Close to the soil, truffle-producing fungi create bonds unlike any other. Truffles release scent compounds that mimic the aromas of ripe fruit or other enticing foods. Mammals with keen senses of smell, such as pigs, certain rodents, and even foxes, detect these scents easily. When they dig up and consume the truffles, they help spread the spores through their waste. The partnership is ancient, refined by time, each species benefiting without ever needing to understand the other. Without ever needing to understand, animals participate in fungal life cycles simply by living their own. Bears may overturn logs in search of insects, inadvertently breaking apart fungal mats and spreading fragments of mycelium into new areas of soil. Wild boars root through leaf litter, disturbing the ground in ways that mix organic matter with fungal threads. Even their footprints can carry spores from one region to another, creating subtle paths of colonization across the forest floor. Across the forest floor, fungi also aid animals by creating food sources indirectly. Some fungi decompose plant material so thoroughly that nutrients become abundant in certain patches of soil. These fertile pockets support lush growth of grasses, shrubs, and flowers, all of which become food for herbivores. In a way, fungi feed animals not only through their own fruiting bodies, but through the plants that flourish because of their work. Their work continues in more complex relationships as well. Certain species of ants cultivate fungi inside their nests. Leafcutter ants, for example, gather leaves not to eat themselves but to feed their fungal gardens. The fungus breaks down the plant material and produces specialized structures that the ants consume. In return, the ants protect the fungus, tend to it, and ensure that the environment remained perfect for its growth. It is one of nature's most intricate symbioses, quiet, steady, and deeply interconnected. Deeply interconnected cycles appear everywhere when you look closely. In dense forests, birds known as woodpeckers drill holes into trees to find insects. These holes allow fungi to enter the wood more easily, beginning the process of decomposition. As the tree softens over years, cavity-nesting birds, squirrels, and even owls use the hollow spaces as homes. A single fungal infection in a tree can eventually lead to shelter for dozens of creatures across multiple generations. This is the quiet architecture of the forest, built slowly, shaped by softness. Shaped by softness, too, is the interaction between fungi and large grazing animals. In grasslands, bison and wild cattle move across fields, eating grasses that contain fungal spores. Some spores survive digestion and are returned to the ground in nutrient-rich clumps that help them germinate. These grazing animals also disturb soil as they walk, creating small depressions where fungal mycelium can take hold. The movement of herds across open landscapes spreads fungi in wide arcs, contributing to the ecosystem's health with every step. Every step matters in ways that are easy to overlook. A rabbit bounding across a meadow may dislodge bits of soil rich with mycelium. A bird gathering materials for its nest may pick up tiny fragments of fungal tissue. Even the slow crawl of a snail across a damp log can push spores into new spaces. These gestures are small, but in the fungal world, small gestures carry far. They ripple through networks, shaping the forest's texture. Shaping the forest's texture is one of fungi's quiet gifts. They create soft habitats where animals feel safe. They maintain soil that yields food and shelter. They weave bonds between species that will never meet, never see each other, yet depend on the same cycles. A mushroom rising from the earth may feed an insect, which feeds a bird, which leaves behind seeds that grow into plants supported by mycelium. Each act is gentle, each connection subtle. Subtle connections reveal how deeply animals rely on fungi not only for survival, but for comfort. Many species use fungal growth as nesting material. Certain birds incorporate small pieces of soft bracket fungi into their nests to regulate moisture. Some rodents choose decaying logs rich in mycelium as nesting sites because they remain warm and insulated. Even insects like bees sometimes gather fungal spores as part of the materials that line their hives. Everywhere, fungi offer quiet support. Quiet support flows both ways. Animals also protect fungi in small, unspoken ways. When a creature burrows beneath snow, it helps create small pockets of warmth that allow fungal networks to continue their work during winter. When animals disperse seeds into rich soil, they indirectly feed the fungal web as plants begin to grow. When predators move through the forest and shape the populations of herbivores, they influence how plants and fungi thrive. The interactions are never isolated. They ripple outward in soft patterns. Soft patterns settle in your mind as you picture these bonds. The deer brushing past a cluster of caps, the squirrel hiding a small mushroom beneath leaves, the beetle carving through softened wood. You can almost feel the texture of a bracket fungus under your fingertips, the coolness of its surface, the quiet strength of its form. You can imagine spores rising like dust in a sunbeam stirred by a bird's wing. The forest feels alive with small kindnesses. Small kindnesses define the heart of this chapter. They remind us that life is woven from countless gentle acts, many unseen, many uncelebrated. Fungi and animals do not communicate through language, yet they shape each other's worlds through proximity and shared space. Their companionship is not dramatic. It is steady. It is calm. It is essential. Essential, too, is the next step in this journey. The drifting, wandering life of spores, those tiny travellers that carry the world of fungi into new landscapes, borne on breezes and quiet breaths of wind. Far beneath the canopy, where the air moves like a soft tide and light filters down in gentle patches, the smallest travellers of the fungal world begin their long, drifting journeys. Spores are tiny, so tiny that millions can rest easily on the underside of a single mushroom cap. Yet each one carries the full promise of a vast hidden network waiting to grow. Their movements shape forests. Their patience shapes ecosystems. Their stillness holds the quiet beginnings of life that may take years, decades, or even centuries to unfold. Spores drift not to conquer space, but to find the places where stillness welcomes them. They are travellers carried on the soft breath of the earth. The soft breath of the earth begins with a mushroom poised above the soil. Beneath its cap, rows of gills or spongy pores hold millions of spores in delicate chambers. These spores wait in darkness, sensing faint shifts in humidity and temperature. When the moment arrives, perhaps as dusk cools the air, or when a breeze stirs beneath the trees and they loosen their grip and lift, their release is silent, their motion nearly invisible. Yet within this quiet rising lies the entire potential of a fungal world preparing to begin again. Begin again. That is the quiet intention behind each drifting spore. Scientists describe spores as reproductive cells, light enough to be carried by the faintest currents, resilient enough to survive harsh environments. But in the hush of night, they feel like something gentler, like tiny seeds of rest rising from the forest floor. Some spores are spherical, others elongated, others textured with fine ridges. Under a microscope, their surfaces reveal patterns as intricate as frost on a window pane. To the naked eye, however, they appear as soft dust, easily lifted and easily forgotten. But nothing about their journey is careless. Each step follows a rhythm older than the forest itself. Older than the forest itself is the patience that spores carry. Some release immediately, others cling for hours, waiting for the right moment to drift. For many species, this moment comes when the moisture of evening meets the cooling of air. A drop in humidity causes the mushroom's tissues to respond, loosening the spores and creating a faint upward current that carries them away. The movement is small, but enough. Spores ride this subtle lift just long enough to escape their parent mushroom's shadow, and then they are free. Free, they rise into the soft currents flowing through the understory. The movement resembles gentle dust swirling in a shaft of light. random, floating, unhurried. A single mushroom may release millions of spores in one night, forming clouds so faint they merge with the cool air around them. Some spores drift only inches before settling. Others are carried upward into higher air layers, where breezes can transport them many miles. Their journey is not guided. It is surrendered, a quiet trust in wind and time. Wind and time shape the path each spore takes. A breeze curling around a tree trunk may send thousands to one side of the forest and none to the other. An eddy of warm air rising from sunlit soil may carry spores upward into branches or across a meadow. Rainfall can weigh spores down, settling them into soft mud. Even the flap of a bird's wing can stir enough air to send a spore aloft. These movements feel random, yet they mirror the natural drift of life. Soft, expansive, unforced. Unforced journeys define spores more than any other trait. They do not choose where to land. They do not push against the currents. They float. They drift. They surrender to the air. Suspended, they move with a grace that seems meditative, a slow dance guided by nothing but the elements. In this weightlessness lies their resilience. Spores do not break easily. Their outer shells protect them from drying, from cold, from heat. Some survive ultraviolet light. Some endure through seasons of drought. Some remain dormant for decades until the world finally offers what they need. What they need is simple: moisture, warmth, and a place to rest. When a spore finally settles, on a patch of soil, on a decaying leaf, on the bark of a fallen branch, its long journey pauses. The pause may last moments, it may last years, but the spore waits calmly, its inner potential held in quiet suspension. This waiting mirrors the rhythm of the forest itself. Nothing rushes, nothing forces growth. Everything unfolds in its time. In its time, a spore begins to sense moisture. Water seeps into tiny cracks in its shell, awakening the internal structures. The outer wall softens, allowing the first filament, a hypha, to emerge. This hypha extends like a thin thread, cool and white, reaching for nutrients. Within hours, it branches. Within days, it forms a small web. Within weeks, it may join another filament, merging into a wider network that becomes the foundation of new mycelium. All of this growth begins with a journey that lasted on the breath of wind. The breath of wind remains important for spores that travel farther. Some species produce spores so light they can drift at altitudes where air currents carry them between continents. These spores soar for hundreds of miles, lifted by rising warm air and brought down again by cooling clouds. Others settle on snow, resting through winter before germinating in spring. Some land on the bodies of animals, hitching rides in fur or feathers. Even ocean breezes can carry spores across great distances, scattering them onto coastal forests far from where they began. Far from where they began, spores still contain the memory of their origin, not in consciousness, but in biology. Their DNA carries instructions shaped by ancestral environments. When a spore lands in a new habitat, it senses the chemical signals around it. If the soil matches its needs, the hypha emerges. If it is too dry, too cold, too nutrient poor, the spore may simply wait. Some spores remain dormant for astonishing lengths of time. They hold their potential like small lanterns kept behind glass, unlit but ready. Ready is the word that defines spores best. Not urgent, not eager, just ready. Ready for the right conditions, ready for moisture, ready for the quiet invitation of soil softened by rain. Some spores germinate when touched by fire. a biological response to forest ecosystems shaped by periodic burns. Others germinate only in the presence of certain roots, waiting for the subtle chemicals released by compatible trees. These precise relationships shape fungal distribution across ecosystems, ensuring that spores grow only where they can thrive. Thriving, however, does not always mean abundance. Many spores land in places that do not offer what they need. They settle in dry crevices or on sunlit rocks or in pools too cold for growth. But even here, they do not decay quickly. Their protective layers hold them intact. They become small, quiet witnesses to their environment, patient, enduring, unassuming. Their waiting becomes part of the ecosystem's rhythm, part of the slow exchange of time between seasons. Between seasons, spores teach us something about persistence. The forest does not hurry through its cycles. Leaves fall long before they decompose, seeds scatter months before they sprout, and spores drift far before they find a place to nestle. Life unfolds across distances of space, distances of time. Spores exist at the boundary of both, suspended between where they came from and where they might someday bloom. Someday bloom. These words echo the soft promise inside every spore. When conditions align, the hyphae begin their outward reach. The first threads move through soil with delicate precision, finding nutrients from decaying matter. These threads branch, split, merge, widen. A network forms beneath the surface. This small patch of mycelium may remain isolated, or it may connect with other mycelial webs, forming a larger organism. Sometimes many spores germinate in the same patch of soil, their networks eventually fusing into a single expansive body that can stretch for meters or kilometers. Kilometers of hidden threads all depend on spores settling in the right moment. This invisible architecture gives rise to the fruiting bodies we recognize as mushrooms. Every fungal bloom begins with a single spore drifting into the quiet cradle of a forest floor. Every glow mushroom, every bracket shelf, every coral-like cluster starts as a dust-like particle carried gently by wind. The forest's most intricate shapes begin from the smallest, simplest forms. The smallest, simplest forms can also create the most breathtaking journeys. Some spores ride thunderstorms. Winds lift them high into cloud layers, where they travel alongside water droplets forming rain. They may drift for hours or days before being brought back down with the falling water. When they land, they find soil newly softened, perfect for beginning. Other spores cling to the legs of insects that burrow into bark or crawl into hidden crevices. These insects unknowingly place spores into protected spaces, where hyphae can grow free from harsh sun or drying winds. Protected spaces allow spores to survive in environments where fungi normally struggle. In arid regions, spores may land beneath stones, where tiny pockets of cool air form. Hyphae emerge there, shielded from direct sun. In tundra ecosystems, spores might settle under snow, where temperatures remain stable even in deep winter. These sheltered microhabitats reflect the delicate balance fungi maintain with the living world, a balance that emerges from the drift of spores across landscapes. Across landscapes, spores create invisible bridges. They connect forests separated by mountain ranges. They link valleys divided by rivers. They seed new territories after fires or storms. They return nutrients to places that have grown barren. Their journeys maintain the continuity of ecosystems, ensuring that fungal life never grows static. The forest is always renewing itself because spores are always moving, always drifting, always returning to Earth. Returning to Earth, a spore transforms the moment it touches soil softened by rain. The outer layer cracks, a hypha emerges, the first thread pushes outward, exploring its surroundings with quiet curiosity. It branches, it reaches, it grows. What began as airborne dust becomes a living network. What began as wandering becomes rootedness. A spore finds home not in certainty, but in the softness of conditions meeting possibility. Possibility lies within every spore's stillness. Even those that never germinate have served their purpose, offering the chance of growth, balancing the abundance of the forest. Some spores feed small organisms that graze on them, others decompose into soil. Even these outcomes feed the ecosystem's quiet cycles. Nothing is wasted, nothing is unnecessary. Each drifting particle holds value, whether it becomes a thread of mycelium or a grain of nourishment for something else. Nourishment spreads outward as spores settle in clusters. A single mushroom may send countless spores into a square meter of soil. Over time, these spores create patches of dense mycelial networks that break down organic matter efficiently. This enriches the ground for plants, which feed animals, which move more spores, which begin new cycles. The forest becomes a continuous exchange of life, all rooted in the drifting journeys of spores. The drifting journeys of spores also create the diversity we see in fungal species. As spores travel, they encounter different soils, climates, and plant communities. These variations influence how they grow, leading to new adaptations. Some fungi develop brighter pigments, others form tougher fruiting bodies. Others create unique chemical compounds. Evolution unfolds at the pace of spores, slow, wandering, patient, shaped by wind and rain, and the stillness of waiting. Waiting is the quiet heart of every spore's life. It is not a passive waiting, it is attentive, responsive, ready. Spores hold themselves lightly, allowing time to shape them. They mirror the kind of rest that feels alive, a rest full of potential, open to emergence. In this way, spores feel like tiny reflections of the forest's own rhythm, where energy moves slowly and even stillness contains hidden motion. Hidden motion surrounds you as you picture spores lifting into the air, drifting through the dim green light of trees settling on soft soil. You may imagine the texture of a spore cloud, powdery, warm-toned, swirling in gentle arcs. You may sense how thousands of journeys begin at once, how each spore chooses nothing but follows everything offered. The scene feels airy, weightless, calm. Weightless calm is the essence of spores. They remind us that movement can be soft, that journeys can unfold without urgency, that life can expand by drifting rather than striving. Their quiet flight offers a lesson in release, in trusting the breeze to carry what is ready to be carried, in trusting the world to offer the right moments for growth. And as these drifting seeds of life settle into new places, we move into a broader view, the deep history of fungi stretching across time. Long before forests rose in dense green waves, before animals walked the land, before rivers carved familiar paths through stone, the world was shaped by organisms living in silence. Fungi emerged in those early eras, older than leaves, older than flowers, older than the vast majority of creatures now resting beneath the soil. Their presence reaches back through deep time, through a history written not in bright fossils or towering skeletons, but in fine threads and soft forms that left subtle traces in ancient rock. Fungi have walked with the planet through every shift, every change. every long exhale of evolution. They are the elders of the living world, quiet and enduring. Quiet and enduring describes their earliest days, when Earth's surface was mostly barren rock and shallow seas. Scientists believe the first fungi drifted through water, feeding on carbon-rich compounds and small fragments of organic material. They helped break down early plant matter long before roots dug deep into the ground. Some of these ancient fungi formed filament-like bodies, thin threads similar to modern hyphae, that stretched across submerged surfaces in slow, patient webs. As continents shifted and climates changed, fungi adapted with gentle resilience, forming new structures that allowed them to survive on land. On land, they became pioneers. When early plants began to grow along rocky shorelines, their roots were shallow and fragile. The soil was thin, made mostly of crumbled stone and loose minerals. Fungi moved into these new environments and began breaking down the rock itself, releasing nutrients that young plants could use. Fossil records suggest that early fungi partnered with some of the first land plants, forming relationships similar to modern mycorrhizae. These partnerships helped plants establish themselves across vast stretches of terrain, anchoring life where once there had been only stone. Only stone covered many ancient landscapes, but strange organisms rose from them, towering fungus-like structures known as prototaxites. These organisms grew several meters tall, long before trees or shrubs added height to the earth. Their existence puzzled scientists for decades. Some thought they were giant algae. Others believed they were early forms of plant life. But chemical analysis revealed something different. They bore the signature of fungi. These towering columns, perhaps glowing faintly beneath prehistoric skies, once dominated landscapes of moss and small plants. They stood like quiet monuments, absorbing nutrients slowly, witnessing the earliest days of life on land. Witnessing the earliest days of life gave fungi a unique place in Earth's timeline. They spread into soils long before animals ventured out of water. They decomposed fallen plant material long before insects swarmed through forests. They shaped the nutrients available for future generations. Their impact was subtle, but profound. Without fungi, early plant life would have struggled to survive in nutrient-poor ground. Without fungi, soil would have developed at a much slower pace. They were architects of the world long before roots sank deeply into earth. Into earth, early fungi wove their hyphae with calm determination. As plants evolved, fungi evolved alongside them. Some species developed specialized structures to exchange nutrients with roots. Others adapted to live on surfaces of leaves or inside stems, forming quiet, symbiotic partnerships. Still others grew on dead plant material, breaking it down into basic elements. These roles shaped the rise of forests that would eventually blanket the planet. Over millions of years, fungi became indispensable, a silent foundation beneath every ecosystem. Every ecosystem still carries their quiet signature. In ancient swamps, fungi decomposed fallen ferns and early trees, contributing to the formation of coal over vast stretches of time. In prehistoric grasslands, they helped recycle tough plant stems. In deserts, they broke down crusts formed by windblown minerals. Even in ocean environments, fungal relatives assisted in recycling organic matter. Their reach expanded across every biome, guided by adaptability rather than aggression. Fungi never dominated the world through size or speed. They shaped it through persistence. Persistence carried them through Earth's great transitions. When ice ages swept across continents, Fungi retreated beneath thick snow, living slowly in frozen soil. When mass extinctions rippled through oceans and land, fungi endured by feeding on the abundance of dead organic matter. After the asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs, fungal spores became abundant in the fossil record, a sign that fungi thrived as they decomposed the vast remains of forests and creatures. In moments of planetary upheaval, fungi did not falter. They adapted, they waited, they resumed. They resumed their quiet work even as new species appeared and vanished. As flowering plants emerged, fungi partnered with many of them, forming intricate networks of nutrient exchange. As insects evolved, fungi learned to decompose their chitinous shells. As mammals spread across the globe, fungi adapted to occupy new niches, from cool temperate forests to warm tropical undergrowth. Their evolution followed a rhythm of flexibility, not force. They changed shape when needed, altered chemistry when useful, and maintained patience when conditions grew harsh. Harsh conditions often reveal the strength of fungi. Some species can survive radiation levels that would harm most life. Some grow in the cold interiors of glaciers. Some live within volcanic rock, surviving on minerals alone. Others inhabit deep caves where light never reaches, thriving in air that feels ancient and undisturbed. These environments test resilience, yet fungi respond with subtle adjustments. Thicker cell walls, altered metabolism, slower growth cycles. Even the most inhospitable worlds become quiet homes to fungal life. Quiet homes also formed in the early forests that rose during the Devonian period. These forests, dominated by tall plants and thick spores floating through humid air, relied heavily on fungi to recycle dead material. Fallen branches would have accumulated quickly without fungal presence. But fungi broke them down steadily, returning nutrients to soil and keeping ecosystems balanced. This balance allowed complex plants to flourish, which in turn supported insects, amphibians, and eventually reptiles and mammals. The history of life on land is a story fungi helped write. They helped write another chapter when grasses emerged across the planet. Grasslands required efficient nutrient cycling to maintain their dense root networks. Fungi partnered with grasses to ensure water reached deep soil layers. They decomposed tough stems. They supported grazing animals indirectly by sustaining the plants they fed on. The evolution of grasslands, with all the species they support, owes much to the ancient networks beneath them. Beneath them today, fungi continue the same quiet traditions. They still break down fallen wood. They still nurture roots. They still drift through the air as spores carrying potential to new places. Their history is not something buried in stone. It is alive in every forest, every meadow, every shaded patch of earth. The fungal kingdom is ancient but never stagnant. Growth and decay move through it like alternating breaths. Alternating breaths of the earth echo in fungal fossils discovered in amber. Some spores, trapped for tens of millions of years in golden resin, still maintain their shape. Others appear clinging to ancient insects preserved mid-flight. These fossils reveal that fungi once travelled on the backs of creatures long extinct. Dragonfly-like giants, early beetles, primitive flies. Their wings may have stirred the air in ways that allowed fungal life to spread even in distant ages. This partnership between insects and fungi stretches back through time, a thread woven into the fabric of evolution. Evolution also shaped fungi into forms we would recognize today. Many modern species resemble their ancient ancestors, bracket fungi clinging to logs, puffballs releasing clouds of spores, coral fungi rising like tiny forests upon the forest floor. Their structures persist because they work. They endure because they suit their environments perfectly. What changes around them evolves faster than they do. Fungi stay rooted in ancient wisdom, responding to the world slowly, carefully, without ever needing to rush. Fungi remind us that longevity comes not from strength or speed, but from adaptability. They weathered eras of volcanic activity, long droughts, continental drift, and catastrophic impacts. They shifted forms when necessary, but never abandoned the core strategies that define them: decomposition, symbiosis, and the steady release of spores. Their presence is a quiet heartbeat, running through Earth's history, steady and timeless. Timelessness surrounds you as you imagine prehistoric landscapes. Picture a world before birdsong, before flowering trees, before mammals curled beneath the shade of branches. Picture tall, column-like fungi rising above mossy expanses. Picture early roots reaching shallowly into soil shaped by ancient mycelium. Picture spores drifting through thick air untouched by animals. In that world, fungi held their quiet place, patient and persistent. Patient and persistent, they carried life forward. Even now, fungi continue shaping the planet's story. They help forests breathe. They help soil renew itself. They help ecosystems recover after fire or storm. Their past is vast. Their present is essential. Their future will unfold as calmly as their past, thread by thread, cycle by cycle, breath by breath. And now, as we reach the edge of this long journey, we return gently to you, to the quiet moments that settle the mind when the night grows deep. You've travelled through quiet worlds tonight, moving gently from hidden threads beneath the soil to the ancient landscapes where fungi first shaped the earth. Across these calming hours, your breath may have softened, your thoughts may have drifted, and your body may have settled into the slow rhythm of rest. You've followed spores through drifting air, watched mushrooms rise through cool soil, and felt the steady patience of mycelium weaving its soft architecture beneath every forest floor. You've walked through silence and science together, not with urgency, but with the ease of someone settling deeper into their own calm. Deeper into calm is where this journey has carried you. You've wandered through cycles of growth and decay, through shapes that glow and shapes that dissolve, through webs of connection that bind trees, animals, soil, and air into one quiet breath. You may notice now that your breath mirrors these rhythms, a slow expansion, a gentle release, a softness settling through your chest and shoulders. There is no need to hold anything tightly. The forest never holds its breath. It simply moves through its cycles with quiet steadiness, and tonight you've moved with it. Moved with it through the patient rise of mushrooms pressing softly from the earth, through the subtle glow of foxfire resting beneath rotting wood, through the delicate skeletal forms of coral fungi branching like small underwater gardens. Each image carried you a little farther from the noise of the day. Each detail eased your mind into gentler places. These stories do not ask for attention. They offer a space to rest within, a place where curiosity becomes soft and spacious, where thought slows into a drifting hush. A drifting hush is what the forest creates when night deepens and cool air settles into its branches. Mycelial threads continue their quiet exchanges beneath your imagination. Spores drift in silence. Animals tuck themselves into sheltered corners. Even the wind moves more softly through the canopy. If you picture yourself standing in that stillness, the ground would feel steady beneath your feet, warm in some places, cool in others, textured with leaves, roots, and fragile networks carrying life unseen. There would be no urgency, no push to think or do, only the soft companionship of a world that breathes slowly. Breathe slowly, the way your own breath may now move. You have nothing to chase in this moment, nothing to remember or solve. Rest is not something to earn. It is something to return to, gently, without pressure. Fungi teach this better than almost anything in nature. They rise only when conditions allow. They pause when the world grows dry. They wait with patience, not tension. They remind us that life unfolds when it is ready, not when it is forced. You are allowed that same softness tonight. Tonight, the forest you've imagined grows quieter still. If you picture the ground, you might see faint glimmers where bioluminescent fungi glow beneath fallen leaves. You might sense the slow sinking of a decaying log, turning into soil that will nourish next year's growth. You might imagine spores drifting like pale dust through moonlit air, each one resting gently wherever it lands. These scenes are peaceful, not because they lack movement, but because every movement is slow, steady, and full of calm intention. Full of calm intention, your mind might begin to follow these soft motions inward. You can feel the weight of the day releasing, folding into the background like a leaf settling onto soft earth. If thoughts come, they come lightly, drifting across the surface of your awareness the way spores drift across the forest air. Nothing needs to be held, nothing needs to be examined. You can let every worry soften at the edges, losing its shape the way an ink cap dissolves quietly into the night. Into the night, your body settles. Muscles loosen. Shoulders feel heavier in a comforting way. The space around you grows quieter, even if sounds still move in the distance. Your mind might picture a single mushroom rising after rain, slow, deliberate, expanding one breath at a time. You're allowed to rise and settle in the same gentle rhythm. You're allowed to rest on your own timeline, in your own pace, with your own softness. Softness touches everything here. The slow arches of bracket fungi, the pale threads of mycelium, the cool scent of damp soil, the drifting weightless spores moving through the dark. These images can stay with you or fade as your mind relaxes. There's no right way to move through this softness. You can drift in and out of the forest. You can stay beneath the canopy or wander the edges. This is your resting place, shaped by soundless science and gentle stories. Gentle stories carry a truth worth holding lightly. Rest is natural. Rest is woven into the foundation of a life. All things pause, all things quiet. Even ancient fungal networks, millions of years old, settle into stillness between bursts of growth. This pause is part of their wisdom, a wisdom that you've touched tonight. Even for a moment, you do not need to do anything more than breathe. Breathe and let the quiet return. If your eyes are not yet closed, they may feel heavier, ready to settle. If your thoughts are still active, they may be slower now, drifting rather than circling. And if you're still awake, your body already knows the path to peace. It feels the weight of stillness settling in. It recognizes the soft invitation to rest. Rest now in the calm you've created. The forest floor in your mind remains warm and steady. The mycelial threads beneath it continue their endless gentle work. Spores drift without urgency. The night folds itself around you like soft moss. Nothing asks for your attention. Nothing requires your effort. You are simply here, breathing in the same rhythm as the quiet life you've explored. Thank you for sharing this calm with me. Thank you for walking through these gentle worlds, through ancient history, through soil and spores and soft networks that hold the planet together. This journey has been slow, steady, and peaceful, shaped by the same rhythms that guide the natural world. When you're ready, let the night close around you, light as drifting spores, warm as the forest floor after rain. Good night.